It would appear I have a brake leak, and yeah, so I suppose I'll have to get that fixed. Had the brake chamber blow out on the 78, so we're dripping fluid everywhere. So we got the truck jacked up, and we're going to take the wheel off and see where the leak is. You can see it's already leaking pretty bad. The whole inside of the tire's covered. It's coming from inside, so we're going to have to pull the wheel off and pull the hub off. So let's do that. What sucks about these one-ton axles is that you have to take this whole assembly apart to get this off. So I guess we'll undo all these, and we'll have to take the nut off and basically just pull everything apart and get under this thing. So I guess we'll have to do that now. I have just inadvertently discovered why nobody ever changes the brakes on these Dana axles here. I don't have the right tools, so I'm gonna have to get them. So I had to do a little bit of research, and what I've come up with is I'm going to need a special socket to get that big lug off, but apparently other than that, everything else seems to be fairly straightforward. This is why you have manuals. You don't have to look anything up. It was really easy to find. It's all self-explanatory, written down, and I can take this outside to the truck if I have to. So I like manuals, so I figured out what I needed, and we're going to head to the auto parts store and see if I can't find the right tools to do this. So now we are in the other truck. We've got to go to the auto parts store to get parts for that. So we're backing out of the driveway now, and we're going to head to the auto parts store and see if we can find the right tool. But first, I've got to get coffee. Secret to get coffee sometimes at a convenience store is to have all your stuff in your cup, like your creamers and whatnot, before you get your coffee. Well, it turns out I need a 2 9/16 socket, a special 6 rounded corner weirdo dilly one that I don't have. So they ordered the part. It's in Oklahoma City right now. It'll be here in the morning, apparently. So, hey, I guess I'll have to wait till tomorrow, and I'll get the tool tomorrow, and hopefully we can have it all tore apart. So it's the next day. It's early. I got to run back up to the auto parts store to get that socket. See if we can wait a little bit. It's supposed to warm up to 50 today, so it's 28 degrees right now, so we'll go get the tools I need and maybe go pick up a couple other things, but I'm gonna wait for it to warm up a little before I start trying to tear into this thing again. So I got my socket, which is this, and I bought a new seal for the back end, but what turns out is they didn't have the front seal, so I could seal the axle hub to the outside there. So the only one around is in Wichita, so I got to go up to Wichita now to go pick up a $5 gasket. So I guess we're off to do that now. And with this, we finally got the last piece, hopefully, so now I guess it's time to head back home. Okay, now we finally got our special socket. goes over this nut right here, and you just put a 1/2-inch drive in and got to give it a turn. It's supposed to come apart. We'll find out. So, okay, well, I don't know yet. Give me a minute and I'll figure it out. Okay, now that we've got the tabs, there's some retaining tabs that have to be pulled out of the way. Once you got them, it's just unscrews and maybe, and we'll have to figure out. Now that comes off, and we'll have to figure out how to get that out. But there we are. Yeah, that comes off here, and then the retaining clamp comes off like this, and then there's another bolt underneath this that has to come off. So we'll get this retaining washer off here, and then gotta take this one off, and then the whole hub should come off. So I believe they're both the same size. So we'll stick that one back on here and stick this up and see what happens. And that one is a little looser than it probably should have been. So that's ominous. So let's see what happens now. Hopefully it's all good. And with that, this whole thing should just slide right off. Oh, and here we are. Yeah. Alright, now that we've gotten this whole assembly apart, we're going to clean it all up with some brake parts cleaner, and then we'll take the brakes apart, and then we'll have to pull the cylinder out, put the new cylinder in, and then everything should go back together. But let's get the old one out first. Just a little side note. Before you take this apart, take a picture of it with your phone, or at least have a good idea of how it comes back together. Because with as difficult as this was to get off, you don't have the luxury of taking the other side off and having a redneck blueprint. So make sure that you have a good idea of how it goes back together before you take the brakes apart, because you don't want to put it all back together and have spare parts. Okay, now that we've got all the brakes apart, we have to undo this cylinder here. But first we have to undo the brake line, and then we got 2 1/2-inch bolts on the back of this. I'm not quite too sure, so I'm going to have to pull this out, and then from behind this emergency brake line, and then slide the new one in. So let's see what. Oh, that's wonderful. Let's go ahead and get this off. So let's start with the brake line, and then we'll do the 2 1/2-inch bolts, and this thing should come right out. And just like that, we got the old one out. So now we got to slide the new one in, but we're going to have to run back up to the auto parts store, because the brake line, typical, I went and gave it a twist and she snapped when I took it off. So we'll have to go up there and see if I can't get a new one of them real quick. So let's slide the new one in, get it all ready to go, and then we'll assemble this, and then we'll run up to the auto parts store and get that done. So alright, now that you can see we got the brakes all put back together and everything's exactly where it needs, we have to slide the hub back on. You got to slide it on real carefully to make sure you don't screw up your seal. Yeah, so it should just come right back on and slip right over the brakes. Maybe. So or not.
So let's see what's wrong now. Oh, there we go. And she's on. So what we have to do now is put in this bearing here, and we'll have to put on this O-ring, or not the O-ring, this seal, and we're going to have to torque it down to what the book says, which is 80 foot-pounds. So let's screw this thing on, and then we'll get the torque wrench out and we'll do that. Okay, according to the manual, we set the torque wrench. It says it wants it between 90 to 110 foot-pounds for the outer wheel nut. So, and it has to have a free play of 100,000 or 1,000 to 10,000. That's it. Yeah. But it's important to have a manual and have the instructions on how to do that. So I've got my torque wrench set. So all we have to do is come over here, grab this, we got this, and then put the torque wrench on it, and there we go, we're set. And the axle's good, it's got free play. And now we're going to have to get the new gasket out for that, put it on there, put it up, and this axle will be done, and all we'll need to do is get that brake line and bleed the brakes, and we can do that from the outside. So let's put it together and then go get our brake line. So now we're headed back to the auto parts store to see if we can get a brake line. Okay, so we got back from the auto parts store with the new brake line. Everything's put together. We're going to bleed it now, and let me show you what the backside looks like. So we had to put the new brake line on, and we got it all tightened up and attached, and it's the usual stellar job, which matches the craptacular job the last owner did on the truck. So, but at least it's clean, and we will get this all filled up and get it bled, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so we bled the brakes. They're sounding good. We're actually going to need to eventually bleed the whole system, but the line is on, nothing seems to be leaking. We've already checked back here and everything is dry. We'll check it in the morning for sure. But now all we have to do is put the tire on and we're good to go. Okay, so we're all done. We got the tire on, we got the brakes bled. Everything seems to be working. Now when you do this, just make sure you monitor your brake fluid. If the brakes don't feel right, you know you need to keep bleeding them. We are going to end up having to re-bleed this whole system because this did leak for a while and there's a lot of air in the system. But it's getting late and the sun's going down, and we actually finished what we needed to do. So I hope this has been informative. It was fun. I mean, it was interesting. It was actually the first time I've torn apart a rear end like this, so I think it was a learning experience for everyone, I hope. So I appreciate it. Thank you for watching. And we'll catch you next time. Thanks.